What is good, everybody? Welcome to the Gold Diggers podcast. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera alongside Michelle Magdziuk from NFL.com and the Ball Blast Football Podcast. What's up, Mimosa Michelle?
Hey. Yes, I do have mimosa in hand. I'm feeling it this
There it
Friday.
is.
I'm excited. It's beautiful out in Houston. I have a kickball game later tonight, two kickball games, and I'm ready to
Ooh.
go. It's going to be a fun Friday.
Michelle is so desperate not to talk about fantasy tight ends, which we're going to do today because we're finishing up our fantasy preview. We've done quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. Now we're doing tight ends. But she's so desperate not to have to talk about tight ends for the whole episode that she wants me to talk about some other stuff. So what that's going to be is I've been listening to the Playcallers podcast series, and it's got Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay, and I listened to it twice. And there's somebody in there that I think has an even bigger ego than Kyle Shanahan. And I didn't even think that was possible. But we're going to talk about who that is and why.
My dogs won't stop barking.
I hear him back there.
There was a random guy who walked by my window as soon as we started. And that startled me. And I don't really know what he's doing. I'm guessing he's the delivery man, but he came from the side of my house, like the backyard. So I don't really know what he's doing, but the dogs are freaking out on him.
For people that don't know, Michelle has 6 dogs, 3 cats, 2 alpacas, a camel, a lizard, and I think like a Komodo dragon. You have a lot of.
He's still walking around in my yard. What is he doing? Leave. He's being a weirdo. But we do have 2 cats and 2 dogs. Let's not be dramatic. 2 cats and 2 dogs. It is a lot of animals, but they need a friend.
You are supposed to be the friend.
We are their best friend, but they
don't get another animal.
They need their buddy. They need their companion.
That's insane. What is going on over there?
Yeah, he won't stop walking around our house. I don't know what he wants, but we're clearly not coming out. So leave.
Do you need to go handle that?
No, I don't want to open the door to some stranger.
Yeah, that's true. All right,
keep talking. I'm going to mute myself.
We're going to get into it. And I'm going to write about this later for the website, goldstandardniners.com. I think Mike McDaniel has a huge ego. I think McDaniel comes across in this thing as, I didn't get the credit I deserved for years. And here's all the dumb things Kyle Shanahan does that I'm not going to do. He talks about throughout the show ego multiple times and how coaches that think that their play calls win and lose the game are dumb. He mentions it multiple times in the game. I think that he thinks, I think he's telling you what he thinks the flaws are in Kyle Shanahan.
Well, I think we all think these same exact flaws for Kyle Shanahan. So I'm not really upset with Mike McDaniel for being truthful, right? We all agree that Shanahan can make some stupid decisions and be highly inconsistent. I know you're a Shanahan lover, but
I am.
You didn't used to be, though. I feel like Grant being so off of Kyle Shanahan has now made you like his biggest fan, when before you used to agree with me.
No, he's flawed for sure. And I talked about his flaws. You've heard me rip him, some of his play call decisions and how he's handled the quarterback multiple times. He is flawed. But just because you're flawed doesn't mean you're terrible, right? Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Kyle does a lot of stuff really, really well. He's just not perfect. There are things he needs to get better. Listen to some of these quotes from Mike McDaniel. Quote, "There's humility that needs to be involved for you to be capable of doing your best, I think, and that's why I don't get nervous in big moments. How stupid is it for people to think play callers win and lose games? No, your players win and lose games. Are you the best person to maximize their talents? Hopefully, but isn't that what we were hired to do?" You don't think that's about Kyle Shanahan? He doesn't say specifically, but damn, he was with Kyle longer than anybody, 14 years. If he's not talking about Kyle Shanahan, I'd be really surprised.
Yeah, he's definitely talking about Kyle Shanahan. And so he's saying that's what Kyle said?
No, he doesn't say that. He says, so listen, he says, I knew in 2016 in the Super Bowl that I was different. People were hemorrhaging before the game, even on the coaching staff, and I was totally fine. But it was because I was prepared for it. And I kind of saw that scope even before I was a play caller. I was just being a part of the whole thing.
Okay. So he's real ballsy here, you know? He's just being like, I'm better than everyone else. I'm not scared because I prepare. I don't necessarily think it's about preparing. I'm sure they're all prepared, but it's a huge moment. Everyone's going to have different emotions towards that. It's like you could prepare so well for a speech, and some people are super confident when giving speeches and they're not nervous to talk in front of crowds, and others are more nervous to talk in front of crowds. Like it's weird for him to compare emotions like that. And also I don't like that he said players lose games. Like sometimes they do, but also sometimes coaches lose games, like Mike McCarthy running the ball with like what 13 seconds in a game. Like that's when, a coach can lose a game by a bad play call and expecting, especially, or not even just a bad play call, an unnecessarily hard play call as well, where you're like, well, if they execute this, it'll be great. But it's like, is the likelihood of them executing it realistic? And I think that's important as well.
And I think that's what a lot of people criticize Kyle for in the NFC Championship game. Like the play call that he called where Brock got hurt, you could argue took a very, very high level of execution and they didn't pull it off. And that's why he got hurt. I think that's the criticism that some people have. I want to know when this was recorded. Did Jordan Rodriguez record this with McDaniel before the season last year? Because if he's sitting there criticizing Kyle Shanahan about how, oh, you're dumb for thinking your play calls win or lose games, and you've never been a play caller before, I would take issue with that. But if she did it during the year last year or after McDaniel's first year in Miami when he was a play caller, that's a different thing. And I don't know when she did that. But if he's sitting there before he's ever called plays banging on Kyle Shanahan, I would be like, hey, it's a little easy to say you shouldn't get nervous when you've never actually been the guy doing it.
I would think it would be after the season, right? Especially if she's just releasing it now. It would be weird to release something that he said before he was even a head coach. Like that would seem like really outdated information, or not even information, but like I would be upset if I said something, a year and a half ago and people were using that as like what I still believe right now. Like your beliefs could change a little bit, especially after he gets experience as a play caller / head coach.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know when this was, but like also there's a ton of interviews in this thing. And I imagine that like it takes time to put together and process. I don't know. I'm not saying that she definitely did it before last year. I have no idea. But the shade that McDaniel throws in this thing consistently, quote, I have tangible experiences. I've seen decisions be affected in a concrete end of the year. I'm talking about season journeys that are dictated by emotional things that have to do with the play that's already been called. He bangs on coaches without specifically saying Kyle Shanahan that get overly emotional and throw, in his words, tantrums on the sideline. And if you look at Kyle during games, he flips out on the sideline. He'll throw his hands up in the air after an incompletion. How many times did we see with Jimmy Garoppolo? If you watch the All 22, the coaches film, Kyle is animated as all hell on the sidelines. I think McDaniel was talking about Shanahan when he was talking about quote unquote tantrums that affect the team.
Well, we know he's highly sensitive, Kyle Shanahan, because it's not even just about the tantrums. He holds grudges with players as well. My dogs are never going to stop barking, and this guy's never going to leave. The thing is, I can't even get up at this point and go outside because I'm not going to be nice. And I want to not be nice to somebody because it's not really their fault I'm on a podcast. But I mean, I don't know how long you have to give someone to answer a door. If you go to someone's door and they don't answer within a minute, leave. Everybody.
Two doorbell rings. That's what you get, right? You ring.
Not even two. If they want to answer it, they'll answer on the first one. Especially when you have dogs, like you hear it. You hear your dogs barking. Someone's there. Like our car's not even in the driveway. He wouldn't even know anybody's home. I was so annoyed. I'm so sorry.
I give him two rings. You ring like right now. I'm doing a show, right? What if I was home here by myself? Somebody rings the doorbell. I have headphones on. I can't hear. Maybe I think I hear it, but I don't want to get up and stop the show. That's why you ring the second time. You're like, okay, I definitely heard something that time. And then you go. So I say 2 doorbell rings. And then if they don't answer, you're out.
Just don't ever ring anybody's. What do you need to go to someone's door for?
You are not allowed to go to Michelle's door.
Well, women don't want to answer the door. Like I literally don't ever want to answer the door for a male. Whatever. That's a whole different conversation. I think he finally walked off.
Okay.
we could talk now without the dogs freaking out. I'm very sorry because this is a very good conversation, I think. And I do think Kyle Shanahan holds his emotions. What's the saying? Shows his emotions on his sleeves or
Wears
whatever.
his emotions on his sleeve.
Yes, like there is no hiding anything. But his players seem to like him and respect him. So I think that's the most important thing. And maybe we're all just like over complicating this and being like, well, he shouldn't be this sensitive because it seems like players don't really care. But I do think he holds grudges against players, and we've seen him put many players in the doghouse. And I just don't know if that's the best way to coach.
A
But
couple of
he's a
things.
good coach. So, and I'm not. So maybe I don't know what I'm talking about.
A couple of things flashed through my head during this. First of all, one is when you have been an understudy for someone for a long time, and I think this applies to coaches, but also anybody in any job. And I say that specifically because I worked on Mike and Mike at ESPN Radio for a long time as the number two for basically 7 years. And then eventually I got a chance to be a producer myself. And I took things that the producer did at the time and was like, here's the things he does well. Here are the things he doesn't do well. I'll take this from him. I'll take that from someone else. And I try to apply them when I was in the chair, so to speak. So I think it's natural for Mike McDaniel to say, hey, I like that Kyle does this and this, but here's where Kyle went wrong. Here's the things he does that he shouldn't do. I think that happens to everybody. But the fact that he said them publicly on a podcast, I think is a little interesting.
He is like the complete opposite of him in terms of personality.
Yes.
He's like, I don't even know what would get him upset or mad or yelling. He's very calm, cool, collected, no matter what's happening in the game, no matter if they're losing by a ton. I don't necessarily love that either. Like, I need something kind of in the middle. What makes me most mad about Mike Tomlin when the Steelers are losing, he always, I don't know if people can't see me right now, but he always just stands on the sideline with the same goddamn face if they're winning or losing. And it's just like, it's like, are you going to do, like, when they're losing, it's so frustrating because it's like, are you going to do something? Are you going to talk to anybody? He just stands there. He's not talking to his coaches. He's not talking to his players. And that's his role, right? And when they're winning, it's like, cool. Like, he's letting them do their thing. But when they're losing, it's so infuriating to see a coach with no emotion. But so I want something in the middle, but Mike McDaniel just at least show happiness.
He doesn't.
But I don't know. He's a weirdo.
He talks about, he says, quote, I've been training myself for bleeping ever to be a way that I can separate myself from the rest. I don't have emotional reactions, not because I'm not feeling emotion, but because I've witnessed how many people it affects, how the disposition and belief of a team can be affected by it. So that is clearly something that he has identified as a mistake that some coaches, maybe Kyle Shanahan, maybe not, because again, he doesn't specifically say, but he thinks that's a mistake that a lot of coaches make. I just wonder, Michelle, how badly McDaniel wanted to beat the 49ers when they played last year. And you remember how that game started. First play of the game, Trent Sherfield catches a 75-yard touchdown pass, right? I bet McDaniel was like, taste it, you fool, Shanahan. I'm going to kick your ass now. And then Jimmy Garoppolo gets injured in the game, and Brock Purdy comes in, and Kyle still kicks McDaniel's ass. I bet you he might not have had an emotional reaction during that game, but I bet you he had one afterwards.
Oh, he definitely wanted to beat him, and it wasn't even a game by the end of it. So, like, Kyle clearly showed he was the better coach in that game, but also I don't think Mike McDaniel has too much space to talk about, well, I've seen what works and what doesn't, and this is why I need to do it this way because I see it how it affects the team. Sure, but also the 49ers have gone to the NFC Championship in 3 of the last 4 years. So maybe the way he's working isn't really affecting a team in that bad of a way. And your team, snuck into the playoffs and lost in round 1. Now, they didn't really have a quarterback, so I'm not putting that on him. But until he actually brings a team deep into the playoffs, into a Super Bowl, I don't think it's fair of him to say, well, I'm not doing this because I think it hurts the team when the coach you're talking about has a pretty good history of going pretty far in the playoffs.
Kyle Shanahan played 3 different quarterbacks and went 13-4. Mike McDaniel played 3 different quarterbacks and went 9-8. I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
You're saying.
I'm going to write up more because there's more quotes and they're so juicy like that too. That's the crazy thing is like McDaniel was just letting it fly. So I'll write it up for the website, goldstandardniners.com. I'll do it after I finish editing this show. Actually, I was just going through all the episodes and transcribing all the quotes. There's awesome, awesome stuff there. Plenty of meat on that bone.
Who else did he work under? So he did work for the Browns in 2014,
Because
the
Kyle was there.
Commanders from 2011 to 2013, but he was always with Kyle
Yes.
the entire time.
And McDaniel says in the show, he says, I owe my football career to Kyle Shanahan, but he also said that Shanahan was exploitative. So, like, again, there is some shade that McDaniel, for instance, a big selling point for McDaniel when he became the 49ers offensive coordinator, McDaniel says, was the fact that he got to do a press conference every week, because the exact quote was, quote, I wasn't going to be a secret anymore. Like, it is clear that McDaniel thinks that he deserves way more credit than he has gotten. And that's probably true of a lot of people that were understudies for a while, but
well, yeah, I mean, that would stink, right? You're the offensive coordinator for a team that goes to the AFC Championship, and everyone's like, Kyle Shanahan's offense, Kyle Shanahan's offense. It's like, well, dudes, I'm the offensive coordinator, and like no one's really talking about you. But he did end up getting a head coaching job afterwards. So how much were you really overlooked? I do understand in the media it could be frustrating because no one ever was like Mike McDaniel's offense. You know, it was always Kyle Shanahan's. So I understand a little bit. I do.
Yeah, but like it's one thing to have those feelings, and it's another thing to say those publicly, right? You're saying those publicly for a reason. And
I do think he'll be one of the best coaches of this decade.
McDaniel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We'll see. You know,
I think it's either going to go terribly or great. And I think with the weapons they have and the talent they have, I think it'll go pretty well. And as long as they're not losing games, I think media and their players will really like his personality, and it's going to be okay. Now, if they start losing, then he's like a Baker Mayfield where people, you know, start to hate you because your personality is no longer fun if you're not winning.
Right. You can't be cute and funny.
Yeah.
If you're losing, you're just annoying. You come across as almost like a guy that doesn't care about the losing. So again, plenty of meat there. I just thought it was really interesting. And I know a lot of people don't have the time to sit down and listen to a 5-part podcast series where each episode is like 45 minutes to an hour long. So I wanted to kind of distill some of that down. Vish has been calling me and texting me like every day in the past 3 days, because he and I are the same way, the way we like to dig in and like analyze and throw quotes around. So he and I are going to do a special episode on Tuesday next week because I'm on vacation. We'll do it Tuesday, and it's going to be all about this because he has a zillion thoughts. So like I said, you'll be hearing a lot more about it as we go along. Now, we need to finish our fantasy preview, Michelle. I know you hate tight ends. I know you think it's dumb.
I don't hate tight ends. I just think there's only a few that matter.
But that's why we need your help.
Ranking 10 of them is... But there's a lot of guys, actually. When I was doing it, I had to leave a couple off that I wanted to fit in my top 10. So this was good research for not only me, but I think I'm going to provide good research to everybody else. I'm not going to be talking as long at each player as I did for the quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers, but I do think I can help you out a little bit for your drafts.
That's the whole point, is that, look, obviously I know it's great to get Kelsey. I know it's great to get Kittle or Mark Andrews, but what if I don't? You need to help. The aimless sheep are out there, Michelle. They need you to shepherd them into fantasy football success. Are you capable of that?
I am.
Okay.
With my mimosa, I'm capable of anything.
So we'll start at number 10. First of all, we all know like Kelsey and Kittle at the top of the list, but we'll start at number 10.
Kelsey, yeah, but don't get ahead of yourself there with Kittle.
I forgot how much you hate George Kittle. Okay. Fantasy football preview.
I don't hate
number 10.
All right. Number 10 is Greg Dulcich from the Broncos. He was a rookie last year, so going just into his second season. We all know rookie tight ends almost always are pretty much pointless, right? They don't do a whole lot unless you were drafted super highly. And even then, they don't typically do a whole lot either. But the crazy thing about Dulcich is that he didn't even get to play until week 6 because of an injury. So he didn't even suit up for a game until week 6 of his rookie season. He played just from week 6 through 16, so 10 games, and he scored 11 plus fantasy points in 5 of those 10 games. Like 50% of his games for a rookie. Like this wouldn't be This wouldn't be really noteworthy for a veteran that you expect a lot of, that you're drafting highly. But for a rookie to come in that's being drafted super late in fantasy, for him to score 11 plus points in half of his games, it's really impressive. He had 8 targets in 3 of his last 4 games played. The biggest issue with him with fantasy points was that he only had 2 touchdowns all year in the games he played. But that all comes back to Russell Wilson being garbage last year. That offense was garbage. And Russell Wilson didn't throw a lot of touchdowns. So no, weren't touchdowns to go around. If we expect Russell Wilson to be better with Sean Payton, which I talked about in the quarterback podcast, I do expect him to be better with Sean Payton. I don't know if he gets back to his old Russ self with the Seahawks, but I do expect him to be much better. So then in return, I expect Dulcich to score more touchdowns. He's a big dude and he has big play capability. He had 6 receptions of 20 plus receiving yards. Again, he only played from week 6 through 16. That was the 6th most among tight ends during that span. I think he has high upside and he's not being drafted early. So I kind of like taking a shot on him later in drafts.
Right. If you don't get one of the elite guys, you are always a big swing person.
Yeah,
You like to take big swings.
That's what you're going to notice a lot in my rankings.
But look, we've seen Sean Payton. He knows how to use a tight end. When Jimmy Graham was in New Orleans, he was dominant with Sean Payton. So it's clear that Payton knows how to use a tight end. I think he'll convince Russell Wilson to use the safety blanket. The only thing is, Russ has trouble seeing guys over the middle of the field. And that's primarily where the tight end operates. He just does. And he always has, because he's small. And I know that like guys bristle at that, but it's true. You can't see it. If you are a certain height and the people standing in front of you are taller, you cannot see through them. So, like, that is a fact of life. So Russ sometimes misses guys open over the middle. So that's going to be an obstacle, but I like it.
He is 6'4", so maybe he can see him.
Right. You're saying Dulcich is 6'4".
Yeah. No, so, Russell Wilson's about a foot under that.
Yeah, that's the thing. A foot, right? Like, that's not nothing. I've stood next to Russell Wilson. We're pretty much the same height, and I'm 5'10". So, yeah, granted, he's, much more muscled and thick and stocky, but height-wise, we're pretty much the same. That is the only way in which I didn't
go over the middle at all last year. So we need Sean Payton to change that. Things need to get opened up, and but it's really just praying that Sean Payton does something here for Russell Wilson to fix him and bring him back to his old Russell Wilson self. But if Greg Dulcich was ranking highly in drafts and he was going high, I'd say, no, that's too much risk. But with him going so late, he has a ton of upside.
Where is he going? Generally,
I don't know. Why do you ask that? But he's going late. I'll pull up ADP so I can answer that for future questions.
Well, because, you're saying he's going late. I want to know how late.
He's probably going to double digits.
Right. And that's the thing. If you can get a high upside guy that late in the draft, especially if it's not.
He's going as a tight end 14, overall 130. So well into the double digits. He's very nice pick if you end up waiting to take your tight end.
Okay. I like it. I didn't expect him to even be on the list. So I'm already intrigued. Who do you got at number 9?
I'm going Dalton Schultz. He's now in the Texans. All right. And I understand the Texans are not a pretty team. They're not a sexy team. But I don't think we could just be like, oh, Dalton Schultz is off the Cowboys now. He's nothing. He's been a very good tight end with Dak Prescott. So tight end 9 last year in fantasy points per game. And that's what basically the first half of the season being a complete wash for him because he did nothing with Cooper Rush. But then he was a tight end 5 in 2021. Like, he's had 2 good fantasy seasons in a row. He's had 9 games of 15 plus fantasy points over the last 2 seasons. That's the 4th most among tight ends behind only Kelsey, Andrews, and Kittle. He signed just a 1-year contract with the Texans. So you can kind of take this one of 2 ways. You could say, well, the Texans clearly don't love him that much. They only sent him to 1 year, $6 million. But also Schultz now has to play. Like, he's still playing for that longer contract. And I think he's trying to show that he wasn't just a good tight end because he was in the Cowboy system, because he was playing with Dak. Like, he's trying to prove, no, I'm just a good tight end. So has a lot of motivation, and he could easily be the top target in this offense. And that's what I'm looking for with late round tight ends. I'm looking for a guy that could be a top target in his offense because that's where the upside comes from. 4 of the Texans' top 5 reception leaders from last season are gone. And that's including tight end Jordan Akins, who led the team with 5 receiving touchdowns. So there's a lot of space to go around. Like he has to compete with Robert Woods and rookie Tank Dell, who I do love, and Nico Collins and John Mechie and Noah Brown. Those are his competition. He could easily be the top target in this offense, and we've seen him be good when he gets a lot of targets.
I love that philosophy. Basically, like, who the hell else are they going to throw to in Houston?
Yeah.
And like you said, like, it doesn't matter how you get him or why you get him, just that you get him. So I'm totally on board with Dalton Schultz. I do get very scared, though, when guys leave their team and their quarterback and go to a completely different situation just because there is that uncertainty. I hate uncertainty when it comes to fantasy football, but like, there's always uncertainty if we're going to be honest about things. So
and his cost is totally in that, right? People are not drafting him high. He's going as a tight end 12, pick 133. So again, well into the double digits. He's going like right before Dalton Kincaid, the rookie for the Bills. Like they're going back to back. In that case, I'm going to take the guy that we've seen be consistent and productive instead of a rookie tight end. He would have to be a unicorn to be good in his rookie season.
Take the proven guy. And if he's TE12, like a lot of leagues are 12-team leagues. So essentially what you're saying is like, hey, everybody else could have their starter at tight end. You may be able to pluck this guy in that round. And you could say, look, no one's going to be in a position to catch more passes other than like Kelsey, like, because you said no one else is there in Houston. I like Schultz at number 9 too. See, I like this. You are educating me right now. You are helping me. Maybe I just won't take a tight end until we get to, TE12.
Yeah, well, that's what all of us fantasy people talk ourselves into. Like, oh, there's tight ends you can take later. And it's like, no, I should have just taken Kelsey in the first because he's the only one that matters. This tight end 8, it doesn't feel good. And he's not going to be on any of my teams because for whatever reason, his draft cost will not come down no matter what he doesn't do. And it's Kyle Pitts of the Falcons. He was the tight end 6 in his rookie season. He put up 1,026 receiving yards. Absolutely amazing, right? As a rookie, but he was still just a tight end 11 in fantasy points per game.
Because he doesn't score any friggin' touchdowns.
Yeah, he had just 1 touchdown. He scored just 3 touchdowns in his career so far over 2 years.
Think about that. That's wild.
I understand this is why you can't leave him off your top 10, right? Because of just how amazingly talented he is and the upside he does have if he were to get targets and they were to target him in the end zone. Like if it all comes through for him and the team is utilizing him a ton, he has the capability to be a tight end 1, to be the tight end 1. It's just, we haven't seen it all come together yet. And also like they're a team that doesn't really have a ton of other pass weapons. It's Drake London and Bijan Robinson out of the backfield, but like they don't have a wide receiver 2 worth even noting. Like Kyle Pitts should be the wide receiver 2. What's crazy is that last season, the Falcons targeted tight ends at a 25% rate. It was the 4th highest rate last year. And Pitts led the tight ends with 59 targets. No other tight end had more than 30 targets. That just goes to show you they never passed the goddamn ball. It was run. And I don't see that changing since they spent the 8th overall pick on a running back. I don't think they're going to want to pass that much. So it's just not going to leave much consistency for Kyle Pitts. And that's why I have him down at 8, even though he has huge upside. And he's not going to be on any of my teams because he's being drafted as the tight end 5, number 72 overall. It's too high for me to take him in the 6th round. No, thank you.
That's got to be so frustrating for people that have Kyle Pitts. Like, damn it, can we stop running the ball? Although I will say Atlanta was really good running the ball, but it's frustrating if you have Kyle Pitts. Come on. You got to utilize your weapons. I know you like to run the ball, but when you have a talent like this, and like we said, he put up 1,000 yards as a rookie tight end. Almost nobody does that. Going all the way back to like Mike Ditka, I think was one of the few.
Mike Ditka is the only one that had more receiving yards than him as a rookie tight end.
And he played 1 billion years ago. By the way, the crazy part about that is Ditka tore his ACL that year and played the whole year on the torn ACL and still put up 1,000 yards. It's crazy. And if you've ever seen Mike Ditka walk around like I have, because he used to work at ESPN when I was there, you can tell he played a whole season on a torn ACL. I'll just say that.
I wonder if he regrets it.
Yeah, they called him Iron Mike for a reason. But maybe this is the year for Pitts. And like you said, if teams are taking him high, I don't know that I would do that. But if you get a bunch of people that think like you and maybe it starts to get a little later and you snag him, like again, talking about the swings, that's a home run swing potentially if it comes through.
Yeah, but there's a guy I'm about to talk about who I think has the same upside. Maybe not same,
Ooh,
but has really high upside and is going almost like 60 picks after him.
who is
So
it?
it's Chig Okonkwo from the Titans. He's was also a rookie last year, 4th round pick. He will be going into his second year. He didn't get to play over 30 snaps in a game until week 13. He played over 30 snaps in 4 games last year, averaged 5 targets per game, over 50 receiving yards per game, and averaged over 13 fantasy points per game in those 4 game sample size. Very small, right? But Austin Hooper had the second most targets on that team last year. Austin Hooper is a tight end that now has signed with the Raiders. He had 60 targets, 41 receptions, both second on the team. And they didn't really add anyone. So they lose Austin Hooper. They have Treylon Burks, who is going into a second year as well. We expect him to be the wide receiver 1 and get the most targets on the team. But then there's still plenty of room for everybody else. Robert Woods led the team last year. Targets, he's gone. He's now with the Texans, but he didn't do much of anything. And there's just so much room for opportunity here. He's a super fast dude. He ran a 4.52 40 at 243 pounds. He had 4 receptions of 30 plus receiving yards last year. Only Kelsey, Kittle, and Hunter Henry, weirdly enough, had more. But like Kelsey had 7, Kittle had 6, Hunter Henry had 5. He had 4. And again, he didn't play over 30 snaps until week 13. He ran just 172 routes last year. Kelsey ran 600 to compare. Okonkwo averaged 2.6 yards per route run last year. That led all tight ends. And the Titans targeted the tight end position the 3rd most in the NFL last season. As I said, they haven't added anybody. Ryan Tannehill should be back healthy. I really think he has great upside. And he's going tight end 11, pick 132. Like, just give me that upside. Like, he gives me the same chance for a huge upside like a Kyle Pitts. Maybe not the exact same, but he's going 60 picks later.
Think about how many. That's multiple rounds
It's
later.
nearly 5 rounds.
Right. So that's crazy.
That is 5 rounds.
And like we've seen Arthur Smith and the Titans have success with the tight end. He was the tight ends coach when Delaney Walker was with the Titans, putting up monster Pro Bowl numbers as a tight end. So like clearly Smith sees the value and will value that position. So that's great. Like honestly, like you just sold me on him over Kyle Pitts right there. If I can get him 5 rounds later, yeah, I'll
now, if DeAndre Hopkins signs with the Titans, he moves down a little bit because it's going to all the targets are going to go to Hopkins, and then Treylon Burks should get a lot of targets as the number 2, and that makes him a deeper 3rd at best. So that would change things for me. Just like I don't get why Hopkins would go to the Titans. That doesn't make any sense to me.
I wouldn't if I was him.
No,
but
he said he wants to win. It's like the complete opposite.
Go to the NFC if you want to win. But anyway, all right. Yeah. So we are at number 6 now.
All right, this is where it gets into the top guys. It's not as fun as the first few. It's Dallas Goedert of the Eagles. Before his injury, he was on pace for over 1,000 yards for 6 touchdowns from weeks 1 through 10. He got injured in week 10, but later in the game, he was averaging over 60 receiving yards per game, 3rd most among tight ends behind only Kelsey and Mark Andrews. He was a tight end 3 during that span and points per game. He doesn't ever really put up huge games, but he never really disappoints either. He's scored at least 9 points in 10 of his 12 games played. He's rarely going to kill you because it's just AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and him. That's it. Like that's all there is on that offense. There's no one else they passed to, and there's no one else they added. So I do think Dallas Goedert's a fine pick. He's not really one I love. He's going as a tight end 6, pick 76. I don't think he has enough upside for me to take him. But you could pick him and plug him in every week. Every week, if you just want a guy that's going to get you around 10 to 15 points every week, that's your guy. And that's fine. It's kind of almost like a headache taken away from you. You don't have to worry about it.
I think it depends on how you construct the rest of your roster, right? If you take a lot of big swings elsewhere, maybe you say, hey, this is the one spot where I need to just be dependable. I don't need a home run every time. Just give me a guy that can hit a bunch of singles and doubles and get on base. And that'll keep me afloat. And the other guys, hopefully, when they have their big weeks, that'll be how I win. So I think it depends on how you construct your team. I don't think you can win a league if you just have a bunch of guys like Dallas Goedert, but he might be exactly what your team needs depending on what you do elsewhere.
I completely agree with you. I love that. I love that. Look at you becoming a fantasy expert.
You act like I know nothing about fantasy
You're a
football.
little fantasy expert now.
Just because I read a fantasy football magazine, you act like
Did you get it in the mail yet?
Yeah, I got it. It's right over.
Have you been reading it while you've been pooping?
Yes.
Perfect.
I don't know why you had to mention my poop, but yeah, I have. If you want to be honest,
have you
I
read the whole thing front to back?
No, not yet. But I'm going on vacation this weekend, and that's when I do most of my reading at the beach. So I will not pooping. I'll be on the beach reading my fantasy football magazine.
You can poop in the ocean. I
no,
won't, but people do. I don't, but people do.
Oh, no, you can't just throw that in and expect me not to think you don't poop in the ocean.
I definitely don't. I can't even pee in the ocean because I get too nervous. But people do.
You've never peed in the ocean.
I didn't say I never did, but it took me so long. I peed once because I really wanted to try it and I had to pee. It took me like an hour to be able to finally do it. I was so nervous. Like I couldn't get it out. Stage
fright?
Yeah, I don't know. But I'm also scared of the ocean. So it's not really, I don't want to be in that deep, but you got to go in pretty deep if you're going to just like.
You're going to let it go.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because this came up on one of the local San Francisco radio stations. Have you ever heard about the men's bathroom and the trough?
No.
So, okay. Back in the day at Candlestick Park and other stadiums, in the men's bathroom, I don't know who thought of this, but instead of urinals, there's literally just a trough in the middle of the room. And dudes are expected to just go and pee. There's no divider. There's no curtain. There's no separation of any kind.
Wow.
And that's how it used to be. You just had to whip it out.
Well, hopefully everyone just like keep minding their own business and not looking around. Just look at your own shit that's going on. Wait, they had to have stalls in case you had to poop.
Yeah, there's stalls in there, but like those would fill up quick because dudes don't want to be elbow to elbow with another guy with their junk out.
Yeah, I always thought urinals were weird in the first place. Like it's just weird you have your butt out there.
You don't have your butt out there. Wait a minute. You think that
don't you have to take down your pants?
Yeah, if you're 5 years old, you think that a bunch of grown men are going pants and boxers to the floor when they go to the urinal?
But under your butt, right?
No. Oh. The only people that do that are your kids when you're teaching them how to use the urinal because they don't care. You just you unzip the front and you just pull it down. You don't pull down. Your ass is totally covered in the men's room.
I always thought that would be so weird to just like have a bunch of asses out.
Oh my God. Dave, this is educational. I'm teaching you what life in the men's bathroom is like.
I never want to go in there, so it's okay.
If you have a young kid, guaranteed the first couple times they use the urinal. It's hilarious to see because they have no shame whatsoever. So it's literally full on pants to the floor, usually like a wide stance.
I don't think I'll have that experience though, because they would come in the women's room with me until they're old enough to go by themselves. Right. Yeah. So I'm never going to get that experience.
I was always weirded out by that at first because it's like, especially when I had my daughter, it's like, wait, do I go to the women's room because she's a girl, or does she come to the men's room with me because I'm a guy?
That's harder with guy and little girl. Yeah, I don't know. What did you do?
Men's room. Always men's room.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's harder.
It's no big deal. But anyway, we've gotten way off track here. We're at number 6 right now. 6 was Goddard. So we're halfway through. Okay.
You're not going to like this one.
Oh boy. I know.
George Kittle. So you're saying you would have him as 2 because you said obviously Kelsey and Kittle at the top, but I have Kittle at 5. Let me explain. Yes, he has massive games. He's had 7 games with 20 plus fantasy points over the last 2 seasons. That's third most among tight ends. He does have those huge games. That's so nice. But he also has 13 games with fewer than 13 fantasy points over the last 2 seasons. When you're comparing, Kelsey has 6. So less than half of what he has. He has 6. Kittle has 6 games with fewer than 5 points. And I'm talking full PPR here. Full PPR. Less than 5 points in 6 games. Kelsey has 1 such game. A guy like Mark Andrews has 3 such games. So still half the amount of games. He disappears too often. And really the only reason he doesn't have more of these such games is because last year He was scoring a ton at the end of the year when he was still only putting up 28 receiving yards. It's not like he was putting up a ton of yards. He just scored a lot of touchdowns. And there's too many question marks at the quarterback position. So that's why I have him as tight end 5. Will he end as tight end 3? Probably. He always does, because those huge games just skew the data. It really just does. Like, he'll put up a 40-point game, I'm sure. And that just changes everything because it's only a 17 game sample size. So anything in the NFL, when you have a massive game or two, it's going to skew what he actually did throughout the season and how much he actually helped you in fantasy. And yes, those games he helps you win are great, but he's losing you too many games. He's going as a tight end 4, super high in drafts. Kittle's just not really my dude for fantasy. I think he's the second best tight end in the NFL for actual like NFL tight end player. When it comes to fantasy, it's just not really my thing with him.
Here's the thing with Kittle. If you're considering taking him, you have to have confidence that he's going to put up, at least continue with the touchdowns that he did at the end of the year with Brock Purdy. He had 7 touchdowns in his last 4 games with Brock Purdy. I keep saying it because it's such an amazing stat. Almost a quarter of George Kittle's career touchdown catches came with those Brock Purdy games, like career touchdown catches. If you think he's going to continue to do that somewhat, then maybe you can draft him. But the problem is, Kyle just literally, I think, because the Niners have so many guys on offense, I think he has weeks where he's like, you know what? Their defense is really good against the tight end. It's not going to be a Kittle week. And he doesn't even draw up plays for him, and he just doesn't put him in the game plan. There is no week for the Chiefs where Andy Reid's like, Travis Kelce's just not going to be a part of the game for us this week. Like, every week, Andy Reid is drawing up stuff for Travis Kelce. Shanahan could do that for George Kittle if he wanted to. He just has no desire to force it like that because they have so many other options. So that's why he has so many of those weeks where he's just a nothing burger, frankly.
He only had 86 targets last year. I mean, that's fewer targets than Gerald Everett had.
And it's so frustrating because he's so freaking good.
You know, it's crazy. So he scored 11 touchdowns last year. 11. He was still just a tight end 3. He scored 116 fewer fantasy points than Travis Kelce. 116 fewer fantasy points than Travis Kelce last year.
Yeah, and
I know it's not fair to compare any of these guys to Travis Kelce because TJ Hawkinson was the tight end 2 and still scored 100 fewer points than Kelce. Kelce scored 100 more points than anyone else. He's deservedly. Oh my God, deserve.
Yeah, that's a word.
Okay, he should go in the first round.
He's a wide receiver. Like he's a wide receiver
that you can play in the tight end spot.
Yeah, he has the volume of targets as a wide receiver. That's why he's so good. Okay, Kittle at 5. You hate George Kittle, 49er fans. She is at Ball Blast him on Twitter. Please direct your rage at Ball Blast him on Twitter.
Listen, if you want to take George Kittle that early and have a guy that finally will put up 30 points in a random week for you and win a game, cool. But he's going to also then put up 4 points in like half of his games.
I think that Kittle's never going to put up like the yardage of a Kelce because he's not going to get the volume of targets. But I do think that if Brock is the starter all year, he will put up around 10 or 11 touchdowns because I think Brock specifically looks for him in the red zone in a way that Jimmy Garoppolo just didn't. And Brock has the mobility to scramble around and find Kittle once the play breaks down.
I agree with you. The way he will succeed in fantasy is touchdowns because what my biggest thing is we're saying Debo had such a bad year last year. He's going to totally take a step forward and come back to, maybe not what he was in 2021, but much better, right? So we expect him to get more targets. Brandon Ayuk is going to be a star. Like everyone's all up on him and being better and getting more targets. CMC is going to be so good and get so many targets. Then how is George Kittle going to get any more than he did last year?
Right.
And it was only 86 fewer than Gerald Everett.
And we think that Christian McCaffrey is going to get a lot of carries and passes. So it's like, you're right. Unless the 49ers are going to score 1 billion points, somebody has
fewer targets than Tyler Conklin.
Now you're just making me mad.
You just had more targets than George freaking Kittle last year. And this is another reason I do get mad at Kyle Shanahan, even though it's not, he has so many weapons, right? So it's not really fair to be like, you need to give George Kittle more. But he needs to get George Kittle more.
I say it over and over again. Blocking is still the second best thing that George Kittle does. We've seen him too. Like sometimes his plays kind of jumpstart the offense Think of the Dallas Cowboy game in the playoffs last year. Niners were not really doing much on offense. Brock rolls out, extends the play, scrambles. Who's open over the middle? George Kittle makes that juggling catch, and all of a sudden, the Niners offense has a little life and a little juice, and they go on to win the game. He's one of those type of players for them. So is Debo, by the way. Ayuk is not really that kind of guy, but Debo and Kittle are, and I think Kyle needs to recognize that a little more and feed him a little bit. And we'll see if he does. But like you've been saying, don't hold your breath.
Yes. I think tight end 4 is going to upset some people that he's higher than George Kittle, but it's Darren Waller now of the Giants. Yeah. Yeah. So Waller has averaged the 4th most fantasy points per game since 2019, behind only Kelsey, Kittle, and Andrews. These 4 are the only tight ends to average over 12 fantasy points per game since 2019. Waller's at 13.8. And that was with a terrible 2022 season where he was injured for most of the year, kind of playing through the injuries and then sitting out back and forth. And it's like, I'm counting those fantasy points per game in this, but he was a tight end 6 in 2021, tight end 2 in 2020, tight end 6 in 2019. And again, I like to look for tight ends that can be the top target in their offense, or at the very least, the second guy when I'm looking like how much upside do they have. And Waller could very easily be the top target for the Giants. They have like a bunch of wide receivers, but none of them are like, you don't feel good about any of them. Like, they all could be good, but we don't really know. They're all just high upside guys with no consistency or experience. But Waller had 28 total receptions last year because it was an injury-filled year. 9 of them went for 20 plus yards. Wow. He had 28 receptions and 9 of them went for 20 plus yards. To compare, that was 2 such receptions fewer than Mark Andrews, who had 73 receptions last year. That was 3 fewer such receptions than George Kittle, who had 60 receptions last year. So big play machine on a team that I do think, like, they traded for him for a reason. I do think they are focused on him being the focal point of this offense with Saquon Barkley. And I could see Darren Waller having 130 plus targets next year, where George Kittle, unless everybody gets hurt, there's not really a possibility of that whatsoever.
Waller is a freak. Like, I don't think people realize he's 6'6", 255 pounds. The dude is a monster. If they feature him, he's going to put up numbers because he's that good. But one, they have to feature him, which I think they will. I think your read on that situation is right. He's got to stay healthy, which has been an issue. But I just have no faith in Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones stinks. I think he is a bad quarterback. He runs around, and Dable's been able to make chicken salad out of chicken shit, but I think he stinks. Daniel Jones only has 1 year of his whole career with more touchdown passes than starts. Think about that. 1 year in his career with more touchdown passes than starts.
That's pretty crazy.
And it was his rookie year. Like, so he's getting worse, I feel like. So that would be my hesitancy with Waller, is like, do I trust Daniel Jones to actually get him the ball? Plus all that other stuff that has to go your way, him staying healthy, him getting fed, that kind of thing. I'm not touching Darren Waller.
Really?
No, he will not be on any of my team, all one of my fantasy teams, because I only have one.
So he's going as a tight end 7, pick 81. I think that's a very fair price for him with the amount of upside that he has. So he's going a good 20 picks after Kittle. He's going after Kyle Pitts. He's going after Goddard, where I think Goddard is safer, but Waller has a higher ceiling. And then right after Waller is where I think there is a big gap, where it goes down to the Evan Ingrams, the David Njoku's, the Pat Freiermuths. And then you get to my guys who I think have high upside with Okonkwo and Schultz and Dulcich. But I do think Waller is one of those really good values that has super high upside.
I get that. That's an upside that I'm not willing to bet on, but I think your read on it is fair. All right, so we have reached the top 3 tight ends.
Everyone can probably know who they are, but tight end 3 is Mark Andrews. And if you want to have him higher, that's fine, because he's fantastic. But Andrews was the tight end 1 in 2021. He's the only tight end to ever push Travis Kelce out of the overall tight end 1 spot since 2016 or 2015. It was Kelce just tight end 1 every single year, except for 2021 when he was a tight end 2, because Mark Andrews had 1,300 and 61 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. I don't even remember this. Like, I don't know why. Like, I don't remember Mark Andrews having that insane of a year just a year ago. I really don't. But he had the down year in 2022. He was dealing with injuries himself, plus Lamar Jackson injury, right? It was just kind of a weird year overall for all of the Ravens. But he's had the second most games with 20 plus fantasy points over the last 2 years among tight ends, behind only Kelsey. But he's right behind him. Kelsey has 10 such games. Andrews is at 8, and he's missed some time. So that's super impressive. But also, like, so Kittle has 7, and then it drops all the way down to Hawkinson and Schultz at 4. So he's had double the amount of games as the tight end 4 on this list. They did add wide receivers, but I think people are dramatically overvaluing what they've added. Like, yeah, cool, you drafted Zay Flowers. You added Odell Beckham Jr. Rashad Bateman should be back from injury, but none of those guys are a sure thing right now. We don't know what Odell will even look like coming off his ACL tear. Andrews should still be the number 1 dude there. My biggest worry is the new offensive coordinator, because we don't know what this offense is going to look like. We know that Greg Roman loved Mark Andrews, but I think that's more Lamar Jackson loves Mark Andrews, right? They have that connection. He's going to score touchdowns. He's going to get targets.
They had no receivers in Baltimore. It was Mark Andrews and a pile of nothing.
Now, I will say he's not going to be on very many of my teams because he's going as the tight end 2, 30th overall. And he's going 21 picks above my guy who I have at tight end 2. And that's TJ Hawkinson of the Vikings. So wow. TJ Hawkinson will be most likely on my team if I'm taking a tight end high, unless I take Kelsey in the first, if that's just what I so happen to do. But he was traded to the Vikings weeks 9 through 18, or sorry, prior to week 9. So he played for the Vikings week 9 through 18. He had the second most receiving yards and receptions among tight ends during that span. Kelsey had 63 receptions during that span. Hawkinson was at 60. The third highest was at 41, so 19 fewer. So it was Kelsey and Hawkinson getting receptions like crazy, and really no other tight end from weeks 9 through 18. He averaged over 13 fantasy points per game during that span. That was third most among tight ends, behind only Kelsey and Kittle. But again, Kittle did most of that damage with touchdowns. He also, when you get into the playoffs, though, he still was killing it. So in that wild card game, he had 10 receptions for 129 yards. Like, wow. Kirk Cousins loved targeting TJ Hawkinson. I think they've been looking for that tight end that they could use in that way for a long time now. And that's why they traded for a guy like TJ Hawkinson. But from weeks 9 through the wild card round, he was second on the team in targets, receptions, and receiving yards. He had 97 targets for that time, while Justin Jefferson had 122. That's really not that far apart. It's about 25 targets, difference. He was averaging 8.8 targets per game. And I expect him to be just highly, highly utilized in this offense. Jordan Addison was added in the first round, but they pass a ton. And I think Hawkinson's going to get it done in PPR leagues.
Another huge guy, 6'5", 250. He's never going to see a double team ever, because they're never not going to double Justin Jefferson. So I love that combination. And again, I know people love to bag on Kirk Cousins, but the dude is never hurt. He plays through all types of injuries, and he puts up numbers. He's going to give you 4,000 yards. He's going to give you 30 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson can't catch all those. So it's got to go to somebody else. Hawkinson, I get it. I totally get why you have him this high. There's no reason why he shouldn't produce. And it's Cousins, it's O'Connell. They're there. Same system, all that good stuff. All that sort of ancillary side stuff is all in his favor. So I absolutely get it.
Yeah. I mean,
have you watched the quarterback series on Netflix at all?
I have not, but I've heard good things.
I've been watching it. I'll say this, and I was tweeting about it a little yesterday at Stats on Fire. Kirk Cousins is tough as hell. Kirk Cousins he's getting blasted by pass rushers, and he goes down, and the training staff comes up to him and he says, "Oh, I just got the wind knocked out of me. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. I'm just going to stay down for a minute. I'm good." Come to find out, he's got like messed up ribs, and his ribs are all black and blue. He keeps getting drilled in the midsection, and he keeps saying, "Oh, I just got the wind knocked out of me." And he goes back into the game. The dude is freaking iron. Mad respect points for Kirk Cousins.
So now do you want him on the 49ers?
No, but it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Like, I would much rather have Kirk Cousins than Sam Darnold. A billion, trillion, billion, thousand, million percent. Cousins is tough, man. Tough as hell. And it's been too many seasons. It's not like a fluke year where he stays healthy. He's always healthy.
He really is. I mean, but I didn't realize he was getting injured and just playing through it. Maybe that's why he struggles sometimes.
Oh, he was last year. He was absolutely beat up because their line was not that good. He took more quarterback hits than anybody last year, Kirk Cousins, and he still didn't miss any freaking time.
All right, I'm going to go into my tight end one, which we all know is Travis Kelce. I don't really need to explain why he's tight end one, but I will explain why he's very much worth an early first-round pick. So, he's been the tight end one every single season since 2016. I guess I said every single season, but except for one. In 2021, he was a tight end 2. Right.
Ooh.
So like we know exactly what we're getting from Travis Kelce. You plug him in your tight end spot and he's going to be amazing all year long. He scored 100 more fantasy points than any other tight end last year. It's just a positional advantage and cheat code when you can plug in a guy like Travis Kelce who scores wide receiver points and you get to plug that into your tight end spot while other people have to plug in, I don't know, a Cole Kmet, right? Who's like going to get 6 points. It's just cheating at some point. Like when you compare him to other tight ends last year, I said he scored more than 100 more than anyone else, but like the tight end 6 last year was Tyler Higbee. He scored 152 points. Kelce scored more than double that than just the tight end 6.
He's so much better than everybody else.
It falls off fast. But also when you're comparing to other positions, right? So he had 12 games with 15 plus fantasy points last season. No other tight end had more than 6 such games. So double more than any other tight end. And it was also tied for 6 most such games among all positions, including quarterbacks. So only Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, and Christian McCaffrey had more such games. Christian McCaffrey had 13. Travis Kelce was at 12. Burrow and Hurts had 14. Allen had 15. Mahomes had 16. Kelce is at 12. Like he's a tight end and he's doing what these other guys are doing at much more valuable positions. He's a cheat code. And the only reason that you'd be worried about taking Travis Kelce is because he is 33 years old. He'll be 34. But until he proves to me that he's slowing down due to age, you just got to keep taking him.
And the weird thing is, too, he had 12 touchdowns last year, but 7 of them came in 2 games. And he still puts up the numbers that he does as consistently as he does because he gets so many catches and yards that's okay. It doesn't really matter. That's absurd. That is ridiculously good. I hate him. He's so good. They're drawing up plays in the dirt. It doesn't matter. You can't stop him. You can't tackle him. I hate it. I hate that a quarterback as good as Mahomes gets a tight end as good as Travis Kelce. It's just not.
It doesn't make any sense either because they didn't really have any wide receivers last year. It doesn't like how our defense is not able to stop you. There wasn't a Tyreek Hill to worry about. It made no sense.
See, that's why I get so frustrated with Kittle because everyone's like, well, he's getting double teamed. It's like, what? Travis Kelce's not getting attention in Kansas City and he's still putting up these numbers. No wide receiver for the Chiefs had more than 4 touchdowns last year. Okay. Jerick freaking McKinnon had 9 receiving touchdowns. 9 receiving touchdowns for the Chiefs. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter who they have. It doesn't matter who they don't have. He's going to put up numbers. Period. End of story. And damn.
It's going to be so sad when he retires.
Yeah. I mean, he's just a great player, great personality. Like he's awesome. I'm convinced. I've said it for years that he's the best tight end in the league, and 49er fans get mad at me, but like, how much more do we have to see it?
I mean, yeah, he is clearly the best tight end in the league. I don't know how anybody would say otherwise.
Well, 49er fans argue that, and they correctly argue that when Kittle gets the same volume of targets, he puts up similar numbers, and that is true, but he's not getting the same volume of targets. And you could say it's Kyle Shanahan. You could say it's scheme. You could say it's because he's double team, whatever. But Kelce does. And he has to get credit for that.
Kelce's just open all the time too. And when defense has to be focusing in on stopping him, like you're like, that has to be the game plan. I don't think these coaches are just stupid. They're trying to stop Kelce. And the fact that he's just always open. Yes, that's a lot of Andy Reid. That's a lot of Patrick Mahomes throwing him into open spaces. But it's also Travis Kelce just being really freaking amazing.
Yeah, like you could say that Kittle might be able to do the same thing, and you might be right, but Kelsey's actually doing it.
And he
And
couldn't be
so,
better than Kelsey. It's not like, oh, if George Kittle was there, he'd be better than him. No, maybe he would be able to put up similar production, but he
right.
wouldn't be better than Kelsey.
But what 49er fans say is his blocking is so much better that
That's fair.
the hypothetical receiving numbers and the blocking make him better. But I don't think that's fair to do to Kelsey. I just don't.
I don't think that if the 49ers had just a quarterback and just a George Kittle, that they would win a Super Bowl, right? Like that's all they had last year, Mahomes and Kelsey. Like that was it.
Doesn't matter. They're just that freaking good. Okay, so let's recap the list. Number 10, Greg Dulcich in Denver. Number 9, Dalton Schultz. Number 8, Kyle Pitts. Number 7, Chig Okonkwo. Number 6, Dallas Goedert. 5, Kittle. 4, Darren Waller. 3, Mark Andrews. 2, TJ Hawkinson. And number 1, still undefeated, still the champion, Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
If
Pat Fryermuth was left off my list.
Oh, how you
So
feeling?
I didn't make the homer pick. He just doesn't do enough.
If let's say I don't get Andrews, Kelce, or Hawkinson, the number one guy you would target is Waller, or who would be your number one guy?
Chig. If they don't sign DeAndre Hopkins and your draft, like DeAndre Hopkins signs with someone else, that's my number one. I also really don't mind taking TJ Hawkinson early, although you are taking a big risk and you're using a 3rd round pick on him. You're taking that risk that he's finally going to be consistent. So if you don't get Travis Kelce, I think your safest bet is to go with someone in the super later rounds like Okonkwo, like your Dalton Schultz, like your Greg Dulcich, and you still have high upside, but you use a much later pick on him.
So there you go. Our fantasy previews are now complete because Michelle refuses to do a kicker preview. I want her to do it.
Also draft Hunter Henry in your last round.
Ooh, okay. There's a sneaky pick. So we have the quarterbacks are done, the running backs, the wide receivers, and now the tight ends. You can go find them wherever you get your audio podcasts. They'll also be up on our YouTube page, Gold Standard Network. Just search that. It'll pop right up. You'll see the fancy little thumbnail. You'll know exactly what it is. Check them all out, please, and thank you. And again, goldstandardniners.com is the website. If you're interested in that Mike McDaniel stuff, I'm going to have a whole write-up with all the quotes. You can read them for yourself. Decide if he's throwing shade at Kyle or not. But it's something that I don't see anybody else talking about for whatever reason. Probably because the 49ers press corps are too concerned. Kyle might get mad about it. But that's kind of stuff we give you here at the Gold Standard Network. You're welcome.
You're so bold, Stats.
I am. It's how I roll. Michelle's got 2 kickball games today. Good luck.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you next week.
Bye, y'all.